and gentlemen, welcome to the Kirbside podcast. I am your host, Jay Kirby. Joined us here as always by my lovely co-host, Brittany.
Hello.
Tonight we are joined by a member, well, I guess our third member now, because you're the third guest that has joined us from OBP. For those of you who haven't watched the Off the Beaten Path musical on online on Zoom, YouTube Live.
You're missing out.
Wonderful show. And I'm going to say it, and I'm going to try to pronounce your name as properly as possible. Suchiththa. Botch it. I'm sorry.
It's okay. You get a redo. Drink your cup of water.
Suchiththa.
Yeah.
Suchiththa.
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 Suchiththa. Thank you for joining us. We greatly appreciate you coming on. Like I said, member of the OBP, the Off the Beaten Path musical, also an actor in his own right. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Of course.
Glad to be here.
And for everyone watching, as always, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, tap the little bell on your YouTube app so you never miss an upload. And buy our shirts at prowrestlingtees.com/LostBoyKirby. Always have to do it. So, he said, thank you for joining us. So, I have gotten the pleasure of watching Off the Beaten Path. A mutual friend of the show turned us both on to the musical, Shanna Stoker. And then very recently, I want to say about a week ago, we got to interview Tori.
Yep.
The writer-director. And now we get to bring on, well, he would argue with me, but I'm not going to argue. The star of the show.
Well, you know, there's so many people who've played this role. I hardly call myself the star of the show at this point.
That's fair. You know, nothing wrong with being humble. But I thought you did a wonderful job. We got to talk a little bit before the recording. Such a very nice, down-to-earth person who can play such a hittable face.
Yes. I think it's a good way of describing Kytius Westwind.
Yes.
A very punchable face.
Kytius, I think my brother used a description. If he is if he is half as good as he believes he is, you're in trouble.
Correct.
Boy.
Oh,
and I would argue that he is exactly as good as he believes he is. And so you're very much in trouble. But he's still very punchable.
Oh, yes. Yes.
Well, I don't know if he is very punchable, but he definitely makes you want to punch him.
Very much. So, with that, we'll go into a little bit of your acting here first. How do you tap into a character that's so, I don't want to use, he's complex. He's complex because he's supposed to be the hero, but at the same time, you're like, stop being you. How do you get into a character like that?
I will say, you know, and this isn't just false humility. I have had the opportunity of watching a lot of other actors take a crack at this role. And I've been really blessed to do OBP for as long as I have, because especially in the last year, 2 years now, really, actors haven't really had the opportunity to practice.
Right.
Because most of us practice by working.
Right.
And, you know, of course, you can do work outside of work. You can practice. But there's nothing that replaces practicing with other actors, actually. And being able to do a musical read every month, every other month, however often, you know, we ended up doing it. There were some periods we're doing something every week, and then sometimes we're doing something every other month. But, you know, being able to do that regularly, being able to play those roles, really helped me get over one of my challenges actually as an actor, which was not leaning into the negatives of a role. Just really just allowing myself to be. I said the negatives, but I should say every character, every person has things that we love about them and things that we don't love about them, whether they feel that way about those things or not.
Right.
And being able to lean into things that perhaps the audience isn't supposed to love about a character has become easier through practice and through watching other actors do it so skillfully.
Nice. I can identify with that 100%. I don't think I got a chance to explain to you before we went on the air, but I am a pro wrestler. Anyone who watches us knows that I'm a pro wrestler. I've got multiple pro wrestling merch all over the house. But I know exactly how you feel when the world stopped turning. I was coming off of an injury, and so it was really hard to knock all that rust and all that I don't want to. I would just call it general ring rust. All that time off. It was hard to get back into the groove because no one was running shows, because no one was able to be out in public. No one was in large gatherings. And so it was hard to find somewhere where I could get back into the ring, get back into my groove, and get back to what I knew best. So I can understand how going from almost full time to very sparingly can be.
Well, and I mean, I will say, I don't want to big up my career. I wasn't acting full time. There aren't very many actors who are. But, and in fact, in 2020, it was one of the first years that I sort of went into it having no work for the whole year. Like, not knowing what I was going to do in the year at all. Usually I know like 1 or 2 gigs that I have secured the year before for the coming year.
Right.
None of that. And so it was already looking like a pretty dry year. And then I picked up a gig just the week before the pandemic as an understudy in a touring North American kids show of the Jungle Book. And I was stoked because, being able to do a North American tour, going to Chicago and a few other cities, like good regional theaters as well. Not Broadway, but who cares? No, I mean, like I've never been one of those actors that like has to go to Broadway.
Right.
If I never go to Broadway, yeah, sure, that'll be a bit sad, but like it's not the end of the world. It's just not how I feel about it.
I honestly, I know exactly where you're coming from. Exactly, because I've gotten to wrestle in a handful of states. I'd love to wrestle more places, and I intend to. But everyone asked me, "Are you trying to go to the big time? Are you trying to go to WWE?" And I was like, "Not really." Like if the big boss walked in and offered me money, sure, I'm not going to say no, but I'm not going to be heartbroken if I never get to go.
Gotcha.
So I get exactly where you're coming from. So with gigs like that, what's been one of your more favorite roles that you've gotten in the past? A chance to, put in front of a crowd.
Yeah, I think, I mean, it's a gig I talk about a lot. And I think that's sort of evidence of how much I enjoyed it. But one of my favorite gigs was I was up in Edmonton at the Citadel Theatre. And I was, for those of you who aren't aware, we have the Rockies too, in Banff, Alberta. And well, part of it goes into Banff, and so that's one of the most beautiful places, honestly, I think, on earth. And over there's a training center, and the actors who are part of the Banff training center sometimes go on to do other things, and this was one of those cases where the Citadel Theatre had worked out a training program at the Banff Center for 4 weeks, after which we would put on a production. No, normal actor production. And this was really cool because I got to work with deaf actors, and it was a cast, even split of deaf actors and hearing actors. And I went into the production and went into Banff knowing very little ASL. I taught myself from a book the alphabet. And then we went from there. And when we got there, we discovered, due to logistical kerfuffle, amongst other things, that the interpreters weren't showing up for a week. So here were a bunch of deaf actors and hearing actors having to train together and be trained together without interpreters present. And a whole bunch of us basically just learning ASL on the fly, which was really incredible. But it created a really cohesive cast, and not one without any conflict. There was a lot of learning, particularly on the end of the hearing actors, about how to work within deaf culture in a way that's respectful, etc. And learning ASL was really freeing for me, because I've always been someone that's spoken with my hands. Brittany earlier was talking about speaking with her hands, and I have really always been that person, but also have had it slapped out of me by my parents. Like, stop with your hands.
I can sympathize.
Yeah, a lot of kids can, and it comes from a really old school, I'm going to say colonial mindset around education, which is communication should be done via speech and speech alone. Your face, your hands, your body has nothing to do with it, which is, grade A bullshit. Can I say that on this podcast? Sorry.
No, go for it. Go for it.
We good? Okay, cool. Just checking. Yeah, it's just not true.
Right.
We communicate with our whole bodies. And working with deaf actors in a physical theater production where we had live rain, the Citadel Theater set up these rain gutters that would pour rain on us. The final scene was just non-stop rain for I'm going to say 12 minutes.
Oh
non-stop rain. And we had about half a foot of water on stage. So I don't know if you're aware, I mean, maybe you are, but stage managers in theater are chronically, I'm going to say, afraid of water on stage.
Yeah. I didn't get to, I guess, follow it any farther than in high school, but sure. I was a stage crew, tech crew kind of person.
Great.
Through high school. So I know exactly any kind of worry that you're going to see on stage. I completely understand.
And I'd always found it a little weird. I was like, okay, I mean, I get it. You want to predict any issues that could go wrong and get ahead of them. I get the sort of management of risk. But it always felt a little overly scareful. And also one other big thing is shoes. Wear shoes at all times on stage. And I'm like, I move better in my bare feet and I'm more in control of myself. And I know where my feet are better outside of shoes than I do in shoes. Most South Asians do. No, because we are always barefoot. We rarely wear shoes, even in outdoor spaces. We'll wear sandals and flip-flops, and most of us are happy to be barefoot in other people's homes. One of my Italian friends calls socks toe prisons.
Toe prisons.
And I solidly agree with this. Anyway, sorry, I'm off on a tangent here. But
no, you're good. Country kid, so I've definitely walked around in my bare feet a time or two.
Great. Yes, it's honestly very freeing. But anyway, on stage, we were barefoot with weapons in our hands, with water coming from above, blocking our vision while we're pushing through half a foot of water on this production with deaf actors and all our sound cues being doubled with vibrations so that the deaf actors could feel sound cues at the same time as hearing actors would hear them. So that hearing actors wouldn't lead the deaf actors, but we would all work at the same time.
Right.
Because that's what happens in a lot when you add deaf folks into productions, is that they have to follow an interpreter, they have to follow a hearing actor.
Right.
And that's not very equitable ultimately. So anyway, all of this to say, it was just very eye-opening. It was a huge blessing to work that way, and I got to work with honestly one of the best directors, well, the best director I've ever worked with, Josette Bushell Mingo, who is a black British director who was living in Sweden at the time, has just moved back to the UK, and she was the original Rafiki in the West End production of The Lion King. She was the first Rafiki.
Oh,
Amazing,
wow.
amazing performer, an amazing director. But yeah, that's probably my favorite gig. That was a very long-winded way
Wow.
to answer your question.
No, that's wonderful. Wow, that's not even a story. That's an experience.
Oh,
That just
totally.
sounds absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
Because
It's. I mean, you can bring me back on the podcast just to talk about that experience. I can go on for about 4 hours.
we just might. I'm always open to having people come back to talk more. It took us a while to figure out we don't have to talk for 3 hours. We can do more than one. Um, my goodness, that's ooh. Okay, so since you've brought up um, wonderful director you worked with, who are some of the people that you've worked with in the past that have been some of your favorites? Some of your, and it doesn't have to be a particular person. It could be a particular cast. It could be a particular
Mm.
production. Just where did you find the best chemistry?
Oh, that's honestly, it's sort of all over the place. Like I said,
Mhm.
that cast working with hearing and deaf actors together is probably my most cohesive cast that I've ever worked in. Um, yeah, I've worked with a whole bunch of really cool performers. Um, I guess really early on, starting out, doing really indie theater, worked with this fantastic actress called Brittany Miranda, who is probably one of my favorite people to have ever worked with. Derek Kwan is a great physical actor like myself, and has actually just been named artistic director of Common Boots Theatre in Toronto.
Wow.
So yeah, he's really cool. Um, who else have I worked with that I really enjoyed? It's kind of it's hard because every person I work with I enjoy for completely different reasons.
Hmm.
Um, and oh, so I was in the North American premiere of Bend It Like Beckham a few
Okay.
years ago, and there's there were a great number of amazing performers in that production, but
Hmm.
two people really um, stand out for me, and one is Zorana Sadiq, who is a Toronto-based sort of opera and musical theater actress. She's incredible. She just started doing a one-woman show, talking about her experiences in discovering her voice and family and like so many things. It's incredible. It's called Mixtape, and she actually sort of explores the idea of a mixtape and how that's different to Spotify, and how much that's different to the Spotify experience.
Mhm.
Even if Spotify will say, here's a mixtape for you, and it's not quite the same thing. And so she was wonderful. The other is Nicola Dawn Brooke, who played Zorana played one of the mothers. Nicola played the other mother. If you know Benedict Beckham at all, there's two mothers that are important to the plot. Um, the mother of the lead character, um, the South Asian lead character, and then there's the white girl who's the lead
Mhm.
character, played by Keira Knightley
Mhm.
in the film. Her mother, and so just fantastic actress, incredible voice. Uh, yeah, I honestly I've worked with so many great people, but this is just a few.
So on that, have you, because you've mentioned a lot of theater, do you primarily work only in theater, or do you also try to branch out into TV, film? Um,
Yeah, it's a good question. theater is where I feel most at home.
Mm-hmm.
I think is the honest way of sort of wording that. I have been on stage since I was 4 as a singer, primarily. Done a lot of singing, basically. I was performing professionally as a singer by about 11 or 12. I, really started to hit my stride as a singer 15, 16, once voice had cracked and settled.
Right.
Really settled. Was about 16. And yeah, it was kind of that's when I started hitting my stride as more of as a performer. I didn't really get into theater professionally till I was 24. Didn't even really get into amateur theater till I was like 21. And so, sorry, what was the question? I feel like
it was
film or TV. Yes,
film or TV.
No, so I feel much more at home with theater than I do with film or TV. But it's not something I avoid. For ages, I wasn't really motivated to do a lot of film. I love the rehearsal process of theater. And it's almost impossible to get that in film unless you're on a massive blockbuster.
Right.
You just don't get given the rehearsal. And even if you do, you get given the rehearsal for things like fights, for things where there's a lot of special effects or a lot of rigging involved in film. You just don't get the table work. You don't get the rehearsal room that you do in theater.
You don't get the 2 to 3 months of before everyone gets to see the show. Exactly. We're going to go over this scene and get the chemistry down with this person, then on to the next one.
Yeah. And maybe I'm just a slower performer and that I need the time to let things settle. And I mean, that's certainly been true with OBP. My performances now are really a reflection of having done this for as long as I have, and I lived that world for as long as I have. So I'd say I do film and TV. I didn't pursue it for a really long time. I'm pursuing it a bit more these days, only because I've fallen in love with some things. So I saw, what was that called? Arrival. I don't know if you ever saw this. Amy Adams and the guy who plays Hawkeye. What's his name?
Oh my goodness! You're asking the Marvel guy a Marvel question, and I'm blanking
I'm
right
a Marvel
now.
guy. I've just forgotten the actor's name.
I am. I am so much a Marvel person.
It's okay. Honestly, don't worry about it.
It's gonna hit me, and I'll just blurt it out. Don't worry. Continue. Jeremy Renner. There it is.
Yeah, there you go.
I know I could pull it in.
As well as the actor who was in Rogue One with a bit of a black actor with a bit of a
It's Forrest Whitaker.
Forrest Whitaker. Him. He was great in that.
He was so good.
But yeah, it was just I saw that film and I went, oh, yeah, I want to make films like that. It's not that I don't like the Marvel blockbusters; they don't inspire me to do film.
Right.
They're fun to watch. They're incredibly fun to watch. They don't inspire me to make the art as much.
Right. That's understandable.
They inspire me to tell stories, but not necessarily to make that art as much. Like my favorite film project that I've done was very much sort of this kind of mockumentary film called Languages, where we did a multilingual King Lear on film, where every single person spoke a different language. Even the people who spoke English spoke very clearly different dialects. So one person was speaking Jamaican patois, one person was speaking very clear, RP British English, and the other person was sort of speaking almost Louisiana.
Okay.
If you know what I mean.
Yes.
Not a franglais quite.
Like a Cajun.
Yeah, it was a Cajun, but Cajun that I don't understand if I'm not paying attention.
That's called Creole.
Yeah, it was very borderline. I was like, oh, maybe this is Creole. I'm no expert.
For me, having friends in New Orleans, I know exactly what you're saying.
But yeah, no, it was great. And it was one of those. Again, actually, you asked me about actors I've worked with. I worked with Alexei Serbiakov, who's basically the De Niro of Russia.
Oh, wow.
He was at the time and might still be shooting, House MD, the TV series. They were redoing the whole thing, but in Russian.
Wow. Oh.
They weren't dubbing it. They were just reshooting
Just
the whole
completely.
thing, but in
Wow.
Russian.
Huh.
And so he was doing that.
That sounds amazing.
Well, that's what, at least, this is what the director told me at the time, and I sort of just believed her. So fanboys don't come after me. I like House as well. In fact, Hugh Laurie, one of my favorite actors. But Alexei was just amazing. He'd just come off being in a Golden Globe nominated film for like best foreign film, Leviathan. Wow. If you haven't seen it, see it. It's kind of weird, but it's great. Yeah, so I think that answers your question about whether I prefer film or TV or theater. I
think so. It definitely does. So, okay, so you brought up that you started off as a singer and then transitioned into acting and theater. Where and how did that transition start? Was there something that you saw and that you're like, I really want to do this? Or like me, when I was in one stage play and I was literally grabbed by the whole cast and been like, we know you're only a tech guy. We know you only hang out backstage and do all the stage crew stuff, but you need to be in this with us, and dragged me along with them.
Okay.
So how did you jump from singing to acting to theater?
It wasn't that large a leap in hindsight. I mean, at the time it felt like a really big leap, but it really wasn't. I was in choirs for most of my life, and some of those choirs were what you would call show choir over here. But less cheesy, I guess.
Okay.
I mean, I think show choirs here are quite cheesy, and I don't hate it. I'm just saying it feels, there's a style to it. And so it was show choir without that style.
Okay.
It really was like sing your guts out on this, perform it incredibly well, and it wasn't so stylistic as show choir tends to be here. And so I did a few musical numbers. I'd already danced some of 42nd Street. I'd already, and I'm not that great a dancer at all, but just like I remember at the age of 7 performing "Start Spreading the News, I'm Leaving Today, New York, New York." Yeah, great song, love it. But I was doing that at 7, with a top hat and a stick, and in a kind of a dance number. It was great. And so by the time I was, ready to go to university, while I'd done all of that, I had been convinced by my singing teacher that I should become an opera singer. Wouldn't have been the worst career choice, certainly. But what I did was I applied for engineering. And I was told that it would be easier to get into music school once I had gotten into engineering, and then audition from there. And I went to the music school and they were like, we will absolutely audition you. You can totally do this. You won't have a life if you do both an engineering and an opera degree. Something that I just hadn't computed. Like, I don't know if I can make this more obvious, but I was like very naive about how much time it took to really do an opera degree. and an engineering degree. And I
Mhm.
thought the engineering was going to be fairly straightforward because I'd done fairly well in the sciences in school, and I thought opera was the place I was going to really struggle, and that was probably somewhat true. But I'd really like underestimated how much
Mm.
work a music degree was going to be. On top of an engineering degree, they're like, you're going to have 50 hours of lectures a week, and contact hours a week, and you're going to graduate in 6 years, not in four, and you're not going to have a life in all those 6 years. Like, you won't be able to do anything else. And I just wasn't up for that. And it's not because I couldn't work hard. I liked working hard. I didn't go to university to do nothing but study, though.
Right.
So what I did was I backed away from the opera degree, decided I would do my engineering degree, and I would take singing classes on the side.
Mm.
I did that for 2 years, and I was at the University of Western Ontario, which is in London, Ontario,
Mm.
as my favorite YouTuber likes to call it, fake London. He's from there, so I think it's okay that he says that. He anyway, and I was there for 2 years, and I was really not happy with my engineering degree. Just wasn't getting what I was wanting from it, and so I decided to transfer out. And the only engineering school I wanted to go to in Canada was Waterloo, and they have a co-op program. And that meant that I would actually start in first year after 2 years in university
Oh, back to the
because I'd have to
beginning.
pick up my co-op credits because they do a term on in class, a term on in co-op, a term in class, a term on. So I would have to start in first year and pick up my first year co-op session, even with my transfer credits. So I was like, oh, that's not happening. So instead of looking anywhere else in Canada, I
Mhm.
transferred straight to the UK.
Oh, wow.
And in my first year there, I discovered that they had a choir, but it was at the same time as something else I wanted to do.
Mm.
And I was playing a lot of sport as well, and I was trying to balance that and everything. And basically, kind of fell into doing a musical of The Wedding Singer,
Interesting.
which is not, the gateway to theater that people usually talk about. People will
That's
say things
not the
like,
go-to musical. No.
no, no, people will say The Lion King, Phantom of the Opera, Les Mis, Sweeney Todd, I don't know, something like
Mhm.
a well-known musical,
Of
well-beloved,
course, of course.
music, all of that. Um, but no, for me, it was this Wedding Singer, and I'll still stand by this. It's probably the best jukebox musical ever written. Because it's not a jukebox musical, it just sounds like one. All the music is original in that.
Hmm.
Um, and it was just so much fun, and I enjoyed it so much. And I think so. The part I didn't tell you is when I was in Canada in university studying engineering. I remember watching this. I was shit talking show choir, but I was watching Glee.
Okay.
I was watching Glee, and I was watching. And some people hate this. I love it. A mashup of Rihanna's Umbrella
Mhm.
and Singing in the Rain.
Okay.
And I remembered watching it, and I was just crying
Hmm.
because I was like, I need to be doing that. And you know what? I only got to about Glee season 4. After that, it really got really crazy, terrible, weird. Just I don't know. I don't even know what to call it after that. But so that's how as far as I go. But Glee season 2, oh no, season 1 actually, I think, or one or two. But like it just, I knew I needed to perform more. I just didn't know I needed to perform professionally, and I didn't know I needed to be an actor. I just thought I needed to do that, whatever that was.
Whatever that was.
And show choirs just weren't accessible to me, so I
Mhm.
couldn't do that. And so when I went to England and I did musicals, I think it just fed that little bit of me that really needed to do that. And then from there, I did more musicals. I did Singing in the Rain. I did Our House, which is a musical based on the music of Madness, which is a British band. If you don't, you know one song of theirs, which is Our House in the middle of our street.
Mhm.
Our
Mhm.
house. Yeah, okay, cool. I didn't know any of their music until I did the musical either, but all British people know their music.
Mhm.
Anyway, so did that. Did some Shakespeare with the Shakespeare Society at Loughborough University, which is the university I was at. And then decided I would go to theatre school. I decided to finish my engineering degree because I'd spent enough time doing it. At this
Understandably.
point, it felt stupid to not finish it. And so I finished it. I went to New York one summer for an intensive to just give myself like 6 weeks going. If I can't do 6 weeks of training, I can't do this as a career.
Mhm.
Then I went and did a master's in London in musical theatre at Mount View. And then after I graduated, got married and moved here. Moved to Toronto, that's the long story of how I.
No, that's perfect. Wow, that is a very interesting journey, jumping from one part of Canada over to the UK, back to Toronto, and seeing the progression of little bit of music, with acting, a little bit more acting, less music, and then that just perfect balance that you're at now.
Yeah, I mean, for someone that's trained in musical theatre, I've done a very small number of musicals professionally. In fact, I think I've only done two. I double check this later, but yeah, I'm pretty sure I've only done two musicals professionally. Yeah, it's and it's okay. I'm okay to do one musical a year. I don't need to be doing musical theatre all the time. I enjoy it very much, but I also enjoy a lot more storytelling methods and techniques and approaches than just musical theatre.
Completely understandable. So we followed your journey into theater, into musical theater. How did you find, or how did they find you with OBP? Where was your introduction to Off the Beaten Path?
Right, and this is my very first professional musical was doing The Secret Garden with Tori in Calgary.
Oh,
Which is how we met. And towards the end of that, he was like, "So I'm working on a script." And he asked someone else in the cast to sort of help him have a look at it. And he was like, "You're a fantasy fan. Would you have a look at it as well?" And then he sort of forgot about it, and then I kind of bugged him until he sent it to me, and then he did. And that was sort of the starting point. So then I read over the script, and he was like, I was like, "Oh, this is really." It was like a draft of the first act, and I was like, "Oh, this is really cool." I really like the character of, I'd really love to give the character of Kytius a shot. This is really fun. And he was like, "Oh, I think you'd make a really good Annex." And at the time, I was like, "Why? Annex doesn't have any songs? Can I please have the male character with songs?" I mean, Annex did have a song, but it was like it was a bard in a bar. It wasn't even like Yaskia in the Witcher series, like, who's like pretty killer songs in those bars.
Really is too.
Like, his
my
tavern
goodness,
songs are incredible.
He is honestly my favorite character in the show. No, not hating on Geralt, but I love Yeskir.
No, totally. I mean, especially how they portray him and how they've given him a really solid arc.
Really
throughout both seasons, I think has been very helpful to that as well. But it was just a pretty standard bard song, and it was not something I'd be like psyched to sing every night. 8 shows a week for however long a show would run. And little did I know that all of Annex's songs were coming in Act 2. Literally, all of his big songs happen in Act 2. And so that's how I sort of got introduced to it. Then like every few months he'd send me an update, and he was like, "Yeah, so hey, I've written a draft of Act 2. Do you want to read it?" And I was like, "Yes." And like a year later, he was like, "So we have the whole play. We had a workshop. He talked about me potentially coming up for the workshop, but they weren't able to find money to fly actors all over the place or house them. So he worked with local actors, and he was really happy with who he had. That was great. And so he came back to me about a year later, no, 2 years later, Basically at the top of the pandemic, with a few in between just kind of chats about how things are going. And it was
Right.
like, so we want to do a reading of this on Zoom since no one has work. And I'm guessing you don't have work. Would you? Oh, well, I guess he didn't ask it that way, but yeah, I felt like that was an implied question. You don't have anything to
Right.
do. Come read a musical. And so yeah, I sort of started with ensemble tracks. Because I think by the time I joined, it was the second or third reading. So I definitely wasn't in the first or second reading of OBP online ever. But from the third one onwards, I was in relatively regularly until I played basically all the ensemble male tracks. I was like, all right, so I've done all the ensemble male track story. You want to give me something else? And he was like, I actually really want you to try Annex again. I was like, oh yeah, you said that once. Let me give it a shot. And I played it once and then didn't play it for a little while. Eric Wixton was playing it, Derek Kwan played it, Jarek Gruneckles played it, a lot of other people played it, and then he came back to me. And then I'm going to say for the last year, in most of the reads, I have played Annex. And so at the end of the last, and which has been great. It was really cool to do all that. And then towards the end of towards the end of last year, you're going to edit that out. Towards the end of last year, I asked Tori, I was like, so about that Kytius request I made like 3 years ago, you want to let me play him finally? And he was like, okay, cool, yes, let's make this happen. And this is just for OBP fans. This is when I make the plug #Westby for Westwind. People who know what that's about. Tori, if you're listening, #Westby for Westwind. Anyway, and that was great. It was really cool to be able to get into the role of Kytius. Even if I never play him professionally, I was really happy to be able to do that because it is a big role. There's a lot of big singing, which I was really glad to not have to do live on Zoom.
Understandable.
For those of you who don't know, all the music in OBP when we perform it online is pre-recorded, and all the actors emote with their eyes, which sounds like it's going to be terrible, but it's not. It's much more terrible when we try to lip sync, because there's always a delay. Because not all of us have fiber wire plugged in internet connections, directly from the sea. Because we don't. So our ping, the latency is just too high to lip sync. But it has made for some really easy reads in that way, because we can just focus on the words that we have to say rather than singing live.
Very understandable, because I got to see your, I think at this point, your only turn as Kytius?
Correct.
So I was very honored to get to watch that, because you did a wonderful job. The whole show was amazing.
It was. We've got a great cast on it.
Absolutely. I watched it for 10 minutes and I was always like, I'm already going, yes, Kolgar, you're my favorite. We must. It
Yes.
was just so well done, and I am going to forget her character's name, but when Shanna showed up later in the show,
As Roswin, yes.
Roswin, thank you. It was, not so much a shock, but it was like, oh, here she is, because she's the one that introduced us to the show. So it was a friend telling a friend about this thing, and now hooked, absolutely hooked. I'm basically keep bugging Tori when's the next one.
Honestly, you'll just need to. Anyone who's listening to this who hasn't seen it, you need to show up. If you're a fan of anything nerd culture, I mean literally anything. I don't care if you only like Lord of the Rings and nothing else. Just show up. Trust us. it's worth the time to come see one reading. And we have such a large roster of talented actors because, all of us do have work at some level. Especially now, especially some of the actors in the States are working quite regularly, especially some of those in Florida. One actor I didn't mention, who I think deserves a big shout out, is Lauren Culver, who plays Roswin much of the time as well. Don't get me wrong, Shanna's a great Roswin, but Lauren's played it the most and knows Roswin the most, I would say.
Right.
We've just got so many actors like that know the characters so well that it's just a great time, and it allows us to. So for those of you who don't know the show, it's a choose your own adventure musical, which means the audience chooses the direction of the show, and that's really hard on actors. Because as actors, we do a lot of work to, memorize what's going to happen. And when the audience makes a choice that perhaps is less common or is something we haven't done for a little while, it forces us to really be in the moment. So you get to see some really great actors doing some fantastic work, in my opinion.
Absolutely. It's I think the show resonated especially with me so much because we host on top of this podcast, we also host a D&D stream.
Right.
So every week, just a couple days ago, we are deep in, I think what are we at, Britt? 2 years?
We are, in fact, at almost, the podcast itself, we are over 2 years. With playing D&D, we're, I think, just about 1.5 years. Yes,
that's right. About 1.5 years, because we just did our second Halloween episode a few months ago. So we didn't get to do a Christmas episode this time because of how timelines in the actual game lined up. But we've been very connected to these characters for the past 1.5 years, almost 2 years. And then I come and watch Off the Beaten Path, and this made Tori fan out, so I have to share it. Our show is called Dice Hard with a Vengeance.
Yep.
There it is. Because I had to come up with some kind of witty dice-related pun because another YouTuber that I watch has a show, Jules from What Culture, huge fan of What Culture. He has a show called Live and Let Dice where he streams D&D Warhammer 40K. So I said, okay, I need a fun dice gaming related name like that. And I found Dice Hard, but it was actually another show on YouTube. And I talked to them. I was like, hey, what do you think if I use this as a name? They're like, go for it. No big deal. So here we are 1.5 years later, Dice Hard with a Vengeance. And watching Off the Beaten Path, it felt legitimately like a Dice Hard musical. And
Great.
it just, it clicked so emotional in some of the points.
I can tell you haven't watched enough Off the Beaten Path because you used the word clicked in a positive sense. No
Yes.
one in our Discord uses the word clicked positively anymore.
I wasn't ready for that song, by the way. I wasn't ready for any of the show. Any of the show I wasn't ready for.
And you still haven't seen some of the most heart-wrenching bits, actually.
Yeah, Tori said that.
Yeah. Well, there are versions of that show that get much sadder than what you said.
Oh.
That's terrifying is what that is. Because there's multiple weeks where we will literally, because my brother, he's our DM, he'll leave us on a amazing cliffhanger, and then we just have to sit and fester for a whole week until the next Tuesday. So the running joke is either A, the Simpsons joke of we're in danger.
That's every week, multiple times.
Or when I have to do the intro, I go, so where were we? Oh yeah, in the pit of despair.
Right.
Every time. It seems like that every time. So
sounds like you have a good DM.
Oh, absolutely
he's
wonderful.
fantastic.
Which it's ironic that having you on the show, because I brought him on because he is a voice actor and he's trying to break into voice acting. And so I said, well, why don't you come on DM the show? Because he pitched every D&D idea that he had to me. And I'm like, well, I know you can DM. We need a DM. And you can use the platform as somewhere to work out the kinks of some of your voice acting. Maybe you are working on a new voice and you want to give it a try, or some sort of acting. So I begged him basically to come on as our DM, and he's done a wonderful job.
Incredible.
Oh, absolutely. Like some of the characters that he has created, like I feel like they are like some like fan favorites, like even some of our favorites, as well. And
it's always lovely when someone creates characters for you that you can just fall in love with.
Absolutely.
There was I got to share this story with Shanna. I don't know if I got to share it with Tori or not, but just a testament to, I don't know if this is me buttering up to him or not, because we're in danger right now during the streams, but a testament to his like him creating good characters is her sister in the game. So this NPC who does not exist in real life was kidnapped during one of our sessions by a villain. And the whole arc that we've been on for the past few months is us trying to get to her to rescue her. But the day after she was kidnapped during the stream, I went to work distraught that this person who doesn't exist is in danger and could be dead, could be worse. And then my friends who work with me, who are on the show as well, they were just as distraught over a character who's not a real person. It's just my brother doing a voice, and it was heartbreaking.
It's
some of these moments that we've lived through.
Honestly, the same thing happens in OBP often. One thing we do in between some of the OBP reads is Stories of Aliris, which is sort of like world expansion.
Right.
Which, I never thought we'd get there with musical theater, where you could really like kind of do spin-offs.
Yeah. I think that's the
art form typically.
Right. I think that's the phrase I used with Tori was spin-offs to OBP.
Yeah, exactly. It's sort of, but I mean, it's a spin-off and it isn't, because it's not a spin-off that's meant to go anywhere. But here's the thing. When we did SOA 2, there was a character called Farnham, and he was a barkeep. And Rob Mobley, who usually plays villains, played this wonderfully adorable barkeep with an Irish accent. And everyone fell so much in love with Farnham that they demanded he do SOA 2.5, Farnham's package, because everyone wanted to know what was in Farnham's package at the end of the play. Well, it was kind of a bit of a teaser cliffhanger thing that Tori was not planning on closing up. It was just a writing. I mean, maybe he always wanted to write it, but the audience sort of went, no, we now care about Farnham way more than we do about what he revealed in this show. We want to know what you haven't revealed in this show. And there's this entire community that's sort of really in love with all the supplementary characters. Because I keep saying, we need to write these SOAs so we give more backstory to the main characters. But whenever we do that, we create we were brought into the world and are introduced to new characters that we fall in love with then. And then we want to know about them, and they need their own, journey and story. So that's been really, as well, a really cool part of it is seeing how the world is growing, not just from a world building, because I love stories in which the logic and the magic of the world is really coherent and consistent. Hashtag jerky rolling can't write magic. She can write a pretty good narrative, but magic, not very consistent, lady. No, just isn't. I don't know. what am I gonna say? But now I'll never
Hashtag
get
shots
on a Harry
fired.
Potter production. Mind you, I love Harry Potter, but
Wait,
there's
wait,
all
wait,
of that.
wait. I'm sorry. I hate to interrupt this, but what house?
There it is.
Yep.
Oh,
I was waiting for
see,
it.
so I'm one of those weird Potterheads that doesn't care
Ooh,
about house.
Oh, okay.
Because
fascinating.
I've
Okay.
always found it overly restrictive. And here's the thing. Y'all don't have houses. I grew up in Sri Lanka where we do have houses.
Oh.
And they were annoying as all hell.
Fair enough.
To me.
Fair enough.
I found them annoying as all hell. So, and I think one of the premises of Harry Potter really is okay, this is one of the things I've taken away from Harry Potter is it doesn't matter what house you're in. You can still be a shit.
Okay, I dig it. I dig it.
That's fair.
Or
I
you
like
can be a
that.
hero. Or you
I
can
like
be a hero.
that.
No spoilers for Harry Potter and the Cursed Child, but Draco Malfoy turns out to be not chooses to not be a shit in his adult life.
It only took 7 months, but he figured it out.
Exactly.
Mhm.
Exactly. So that's the only reason why I'm not really big on the house thing. If you had to force me to pick,
You must choose.
I'd do something like Huffleclaw or Ravenpuff,
Ah,
which way you mix those two.
fair enough.
But if you forced me to pick, but I really wouldn't. But anyway, so I love how the world building is consistent and all of that. That's really great and important to me. But what's more intriguing and what draws us more into these worlds is really the characters, because sometimes a really meh sci-fi or meh fantasy can really hinge on just one character who may not even be the main character, but that's what really everyone connects to and relates to, and that's what we follow. I think that's actually particularly true in sci-fi, because sci-fi isn't ever, I'm going to say, it's a strong word, but is rarely consistent.
That's very true.
Because
And
writers will
this is
always come
coming
up with
from
a
a
new
Star
MacGuffin.
Wars fan, but it's true. It's true. It's inconsistent because you don't have the one person telling the one story.
Exactly.
It's always.
And even if when you do that, one person forgets this one little detail that they came up at the beginning because it wasn't really a detail, it was just a thing that they said. Because they were writing something and then they didn't think it was important and they didn't really realize how it impacted
fans
it.
blew it up.
Exactly. So I like Star Wars. I'm not the biggest Star Wars fan. I will go and see every film in the cinema. Except for Solo. As soon as I saw that trailer, I was like, this is a waste of my time. So I have not seen Solo, and I don't think I will.
It was okay.
Exactly.
That's
And why would I
about the
pay money to see
farthest.
okay?
That's fair. That's a fair,
No, I mean, I'll watch okay at Netflix on Disney Plus or on Netflix at home. But why would I go out of my house,
Right.
sit in a crowded cinema with other people, and watch an okay film?
Right. It's understandable. It really is.
And I knew it was going to be okay from the trailer, and I hated that because I wanted to see Childish Gambino in that film.
Right?
I mean, you got
so good as Lando.
It was it was the same disappointment I had with the live action Lion King, because I was like, you have all these great actors who I would love to see in these roles, but you've made some very stupid choices, and I'm not going to give you my money. It's just how I felt about it at the time, and so I've kind of really stuck with it. Yeah, but yeah, no, sci-fi is. I mean, Isaac Asimov, one of my favorite sci-fi writers. I, Robot is a great book. All of his other robots books are also great books, but if you're really careful, you can spot some fairly serious inconsistencies. And and that doesn't mean he's not a good writer. It's just sci-fi is hard to write consistently because you're always looking at something that doesn't exist that you think may exist. Whereas
Right.
with fantasy, you don't have to worry about whether it will exist or may exist. You just decide what the rules are and you can follow them.
Hmm.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just my hot take.
No, that's a very interesting opinion. It really is. So, okay. So I was trying to find a way to weave this question in because we're on the topic of OBP,
Sure.
Dungeons and Dragons. Where, I guess, what sci-fi franchise, or not sci-fi, I'm sorry, I'm so stuck on that right now. What fantasy franchise
Mm.
do you think resonates with you the most? Like some people are Lord of the Rings fans, some people are Witcher fans, uh Chronicles of Narnia, Harry Potter, where's the one that really hooks you the most? And it can be books, it can be movies, it can be the
Yeah.
video games.
I think, I mean, if we're sticking to like things that are fairly popular
Hmm.
or fairly well known, um, Harry Potter definitely got me into fantasy.
Hmm.
Um, or at least, actually, that's not true. Chronicles of Narnia got me into
Yes.
fantasy. Harry Potter got me into like kind of naming fantasy as a genre that I
Mm.
wanted to read. Lord of the Rings brought out the like geek in me because I was like, once I read those, I was like, "There's more.
There's
Fine, I will
more.
buy all of them." I didn't buy all of them, and I discovered that I enjoyed high fantasy and I enjoyed detailed fantasy, but gosh, the Silmarillion. I want to love that book so much. I want to love that book, and I'm like, the pacing, man. Just fix your pacing, and I will enjoy this book more. It's really hard to love. I want to love that book. I really do. Um, and then I guess, and from the, actually, I will say really like Christopher Paolini's Inheritance Cycle, Aragon,
Mm.
Eldest, Brisinga, and oh my goodness, what is the fourth book called? I've forgotten. Yeah, I really enjoyed that. The Bartimaeus trilogy, which is less well known,
Hmm.
which is sort of kind of kids' fantasy, but I just really very impacted by
Hmm.
that. Um, I'd say my favorite author is Terry Brooks.
That's a
His Shannara series is just incredibly all encompassing, is how I'm going to put it. And for people who aren't as a big fan of high fantasy, his Magic Kingdom of Landover series is a really accessible way into fantasy.
write that down real fast.
It's like it's fantasy, but it's very very grounded. Like some people have criticized it almost being too grounded, but I think it's an excellent balance for those who have like not really named fantasy as something that they want to do.
Hmm.
Along with Chronicles of Narnia, I think Chronicles of Narnia is just incredibly imaginative.
Hmm.
Just I dig that that way of building the world. It's just great. I remember reading Aslan singing Narnia into life in The
Hmm.
Magician's Nephew as a child, and just stopping to just imagine it. And I was there for like half an hour thinking of what that song was. So yeah, there's definitely Chronicles of Narnia that I think got me into fantasy.
Chronicles of Narnia, honestly, one of my favorites. It uh backstory on me growing up, uh mother was very Christian household,
Mhm.
so Harry Potter was not on the top of her list.
Gotcha, but
But
Chronicles was.
anything by Tolkien,
Or
anything
C.S.
by
Lewis.
C.S. Lewis. So I read all of Chronicles of Narnia. I tried reading when I was younger. I tried
Mhm.
reading the Lord of the Rings franchise, and like you said, Tolkien's pacing is a little bit dry for a kid with ADD. because that man
I'm as glad I
loves
only
him
really found
some
it at 16.
detail.
Yeah.
He loves him some detail, and I respect it because when I write, I can't do it. I try and I can't. So I respect it, but at the same time, when I was younger, it was harder for me to grasp.
Yeah.
Narnia was super easy because I'd seen at least like the old 70s 80s like BBC Narnia.
Yeah.
I
I
saw
had
the
never seen
first
that.
I saw Lion Witch in the Wardrobe,
Mhm.
and I didn't know there was more until I grew up. But I had seen that, so I had an idea of how the world would look, and then from there I could picture the rest. And so it gravitated to me so much, and I love that franchise. And not plugging the mouse here, but I've heard that they might be making a new series, like a TV series based off it.
Oh,
And
sorry. That mouse. Yes.
yeah,
Sorry. I thought you meant the
I
mouse in Narnia, and I was like, Reepicheep is my favorite character.
I respect Reepicheep as my favorite character in the entire franchise. He is the man. Love
Absolutely
Reepicheep.
amazing. Yeah. No, if that's true, I might be happy about it. I thought that the Lion Witch in the Wardrobe was a great film.
Mm-hmm.
Everything else was more of a miss than it was a hit. Especially that stupid forced romance for Prince Caspian and Susan in that. Oh, it's just like. Didn't even do anything. It was just. Oh, it was a waste of time.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it was just like a waste of screen time when there's so many other good things in that book you could have put on that screen.
Absolutely.
This is how I felt about Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 2. Or when they did that stupid chase scene in Hogwarts of Voldemort chasing Harry around in his ghostly form. But they took out the duel between Flitwick and Voldemort and McGonagall.
I know.
I was livid. I was livid because I was like, of all the things I wanted to see, I wanted to see Flitwick, who is supposed to be the best dueler,
Yes.
duel with McGonagall on his side. And no, we got stupid scenes that don't exist. We didn't even get to see Lupin die on screen. Like, if you want to add something that's only hinted at, do that.
Right.
Are you trying to break my heart here again? Oh.
Lupin, you're amazing, man.
Honestly.
Yes.
And then you have such an amazing actor playing him as well. You know he can sell it. Just put good scenes in. Don't put these stupid, unnecessary scenes in. It's just, yeah. No, I have a pet peeve, not with films not following the books, but with films not following the books with unnecessary content that doesn't drive the narrative, nor does it fill the fan base with joy.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you do one of those two things, extra content is great. If you do neither, what are you doing?
I actually felt the same way. About the Hunger Games. Less said about less.
That's a podcast in itself.
Yeah,
yes.
I actually never read the Hunger Games, and I'll be honest. You said so The Witcher. I'm one of those basic Witcher fans.
Mm-hmm.
I've never read the books. I've played all three. I say I've played all three games. I've gotten halfway through Witcher 3 and stopped because of life things so many times. And I'm still trying to get through Witcher 3, like 2 years later from when I started playing the game.
It's understandable. You're not going to make anyone angry.
It's a big game. It's a really big game.
But
I do love the TV series. Yeah, I'd say The Witcher is a really great fantasy game series. But the one actually that I will shout out, which again is not a big, everyone's not a fan of this, is Age of Wonders 2, The Wizard's Throne. It's how do I describe it? It's turn-based, RPG exploration, city building sort of thing, but you have a hero, a bit like Warcraft 3, and a bit more of exploration like that. That and its expansion, the Shadow. Oh, what was it called? Shadowborn? No, no, that's something else. Shadow something was really incredible, to the point that 12 years later, when they released a fairly mediocre sequel, Age of Wonders 3. I just bought it. I didn't care about the reviews. I wanted to play the sequel to that game. Finally, it's like when Half-Life 3 comes out. Finally, we
Everyone's
know
gonna
all of
buy
us
it.
are going to buy it, even
Of
if
course.
it's terrible, just because we've waited for
It
so
could be
damn
the
long.
worst game ever, and we're all gonna go buy it.
It's going to make $1 billion, even if it's terrible, because all of us are. Sorry, muted myself. We just won that game at this point.
Valve heard you. They're trying to stop you.
Just, I don't know. I mean, honestly, fan-made sequels will happen before Half-Life 3 does.
And they might even be better. Who knows?
Yeah, there's one called Borealis that's happening. That's fan-made.
Mm-hmm.
Looks really great. Like, they've been using the new Unreal Engine for it.
Oh,
so
wow.
I'm all for it. I'll pay a fan to make a sequel. If it's good. So I can get closure with that story.
There you
Right,
go.
and that's the worst part. They left us on a cliffhanger.
Yeah. No, I mean, if they'd finished it up, like most games that aren't going to come up with something for a while give you some closure and go, oh, if we wanted to, here's how we could take this forward.
Mm-hmm.
No, this just ends on a damn cliffhanger that you need extra content.
Why must you do this to me?
Exactly. That's how I feel. Yeah, I mean, I know Half-Life isn't really fantasy. It's more sci-fi. Yeah. Dishonored. There's a good fantasy game.
Very good. See now
Assassin's Creed, obviously, but haven't played some of the new ones. But
I think the last one I played all the way through was 4. 4
yeah,
was
I played 3 all the way through.
Really loved 4.
Oh, okay. I'll take that recommendation. I haven't had like a really good gaming rig for a while, and so I've just been buying games that are basically about 5 or 6 years old now. But that's been fine because I haven't had the time to really keep up with game releases. So, hasn't been the worst thing.
Trust me, and life happens. Sometimes you don't always get to it.
Totally.
That's the one good thing that did come out of the world stopping for a while is I caught up on everything that I was behind on because I didn't have anywhere else to go. So I might as well finish this game that I've been sitting on for 2 years.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I definitely made more progress in on The Witcher in the last, in the first year of the pandemic. I haven't made as much progress in this last year, but than I did in the year before that. Really. Which actually makes me realize I've been playing that game for 3 years. Gosh. It's a while.
That's okay. I'm
That's a lot
pretty
of
sure my
patience.
brother's been playing it since it came out for the 360.
Which is
So
2015 or 2016.
Oh my god.
it's he's been at it a while, and I think he's on his 4th or 5th playthrough, and he's like, all right, I need to stop playing this game so that when they finally do an HD remake in 2 years, because that's coming inevitably, it'll be nice and fresh to me on a new console with new graphics.
I will say, favorite sci-fi game, and I know it's overly popular, but Mass Effect.
It's so good though.
Yeah.
It's just like
the
OVP.
HD
There's
remaster's
so
great.
many decisions you can make.
Yeah.
And who knows which direction it's going to take you.
I loved that the decisions from the first game actually had an impact on the third game. That's what I don't
Absolutely.
like about, say, Dragon Age as much, for example. The only impacts on game 1 to game 3 are who you chose as your starting character, and therefore which sibling was alive. And I was like, or who the romantic interest in Dragon Age 2 was that showed up in Dragon Age 3 as a mention. It's fine.
Whereas if you don't play Mass Effect 2 right, some people aren't going to be in 3.
Yeah. and that has a significant impact on the outcome of the story.
Exactly.
You really, if you screw up some loyalty missions in 2 and you import that save into 3, you're in for some heartbreak.
That's
I think I
why
can spoil Mass Effect 3. It's been out long enough.
it's been a minute. I think that's why I'm taking my time playing through the Legacy trilogy, because I don't want to mess that up. Because it's all basically the same game. I don't even have to change the game.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
It's because you pick 1, 2, or 3, but it's all just one encompassing game, and your save file just jumps right over. So
cool. I don't think I've played the Legacy series.
it's very good. But we greatly appreciate you coming on, speaking with us, talking about high fantasy, talking about your acting, talking about your career. Thank you so much for coming on.
Oh, no worries. Thank you for having me. I apologize to everyone who's had to listen to me rant and definitely ramble. I've definitely rambled.
No, this has been believe it or not, this is one of our more tamer interviews, because we've had some ranting and some raving on here. So you're among friends, don't worry. But thank you for joining us. Tell the nice people on the internet, the interwebs, where they can find you. And
sure. You can find me on Instagram at Suchiththa W, Suchithaw, where I promise not to post very often, because I can't be bothered. And I'm on Twitter with the same handle, and on Facebook with the same handle. I have a page, I think, with the same handle. As you can tell, I'm not one that really plugs myself very often. And what am I doing? I will be shooting a short film next Tuesday, which you probably will never see, so don't worry about it.
Well, now I'm gonna bug you about it. I'm gonna be like,
Sure.
"Hey, how'd it go? Can I get that footage?"
Well, I mean, if it does get out for streaming, then I'll be very happy to share it with the world. But there's a lot of stuff you do on camera that doesn't ever see the light of day. Just the nature of the industry sometimes. And I might be going down to the Niagara region to work on a new play in February. Don't know. Waiting to hear back on that one.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for joining us. We greatly appreciate you coming on the show. Thank you, everyone, for listening. As always, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, tap the little bell on your YouTube app so you never miss an upload. And we will see you guys again very soon. Thanks for joining us.